Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our cozy little corner of the internet. I'm Pen and today I'll be reading chapter 8 of It's Not Love If You Run When It's Hard by Lita Cakes. Before we start, I just want to say if you have any fic suggestions, leave them down in the comments because I'm quite curious, even though I've got literally 75 tabs open. But yeah, hang on, let me check. 72 tabs open. So yeah, if you have any fic recommendations, please just leave them in the comments. But anyway, this episode has has the trigger warning of suicide, but not just mentions of it. But please make sure to stay safe, and I'll see you guys later in the book. Chapter 8. Shota put his hand out to stop Izuku from running away, but decided against it. The kid had apologized, and it sounded sincere, and Bakugo had kept his word and remained silent. Shota looked back to the blonde. He was staring at his empty hands as if the metal bracelet was still there. "Who's Amioka's Osaka?" Bakugo asked. I'm afraid that, Hitoshi?" The other boy flew past him and ran towards the dorm rooms. "I'll check on him. Sorry, I'll come see you later, Shota." Shota sighed. It was probably better if Hitoshi went after Izuku anyways. Shota wasn't sure if he felt like he was the right person to do that after he just gave the kid detention. It was a fair call. He wasn't going to make Izuku exempt to the rules. If he was going to hold their worst students accountable to those rules, he would hold the best students to them too. "Sensei?" Shota shook his head. When you're ready, you will have to speak to Izuku and Emi." "About Emi. It's not my place to tell her story." Why was he wearing those bands? No, hang on. Why was he wearing those bands? He always had them since we were kids, but there's more now. "Bakugo, it's not my place. I can tell you it has something to do with the Quirkless community, but you'll have to ask him." "Sensei?" Shota looked over to Uraraka. She was leaning around the corner. "What's a thorn?" he said, like you're saying Bakugo is a thorn. Shota sighed again and looked back at Bakugo. The kid had finally looked out from his hands and wore the same curious look that Uraraka was giving him. "You heard the slurs for Quirkless people. Bakugo used one earlier. Null. The word thorn is like that, but for quirked people. He was telling you that those bands around his wrists were not meant to be touched without permission. I think he just went a step too far." "I deserve it. I shouldn't have. Fuck." Bakugo left the common room, heading up towards back up the stairs towards his dorm room, with his hands stuffed inside his pockets aggressively. This was going to be a tough year. Shota couldn't do much more than hope things would get easier. Bakugo appeared to be grasping his fuck-ups, and he likely didn't fully understand the ramifications of his actions as a child yet. But this was the start. Shota threw a damn wrench in the gears with the news about All Might. It would have come out eventually, but he really wished it happened differently. He was going to apologize later. He would have handled it better. He could have handled it better, but this whole damn situation was new to all of them. They never had a Quirkless student before. Throwing the kid's ex-bully into the mix, and a whole class of kids who are too privileged to have ever known the cruelty the Quirkless community encountered. This was going to be an experiment of some kind, and Shota wasn't sure if they were prepared for any of it. "Are they going to be okay?" Shota snapped out of his worried thoughts and found his husband standing in front of him. Shota had been standing in the common room for how long? Yeah, I think so. Hazashi pulled him into a hug and kissed his temple. "You got this, Sho. I know this is new to all of us, but things will work out. Come on, let's get you some coffee and maybe dinner." "Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll order pizza for the housebound." The shower stall was filled with steam. Izuku couldn't see his own feet in front of him. He was sitting with his knees to the chest on the shower floor. The water was running so hot that it was turning his skin red, but he refused to change it. Despite the heat, he was shivering. His thoughts were coming in snippets, floating around in a whirlwind. All Might was going to be their class mentor. His once favourite hero was going to find a way to ostracize him. His classmates would likely go along with the authority figure they adored. He was going to fail out of high school. He was alone. Izuku was utterly alone. The bathroom door clattered open, shocking Izuku out of his spiraling thoughts and made him jump. "Izuku?" Hitoshi called out. "Hitoshi, he was here. He came after Izuku." "Toshi?" His voice cracked. "Hey, I'm right here. I'm right here." Izuku heard the first curtain slide open and closed, putting Hitoshi in the changing area before the shower stall. "I'm right here, Zu. What can I do?" "Hold me?" The purple teen didn't do much more than kick off his shoes and rip off his shirt before he was in the shower and wrapped himself around Izuku like a blanket fresh out of the dryer. He was warmer than the boiling hot water is in Izuku's mind. The shivering finally came to a stop and his breathing got easier. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "Shh, no, none of that." Hitoshi kissed the back of his head and started to rock them side to side. "You have nothing to apologize for. You're alright. That joke of a hero shouldn't be teaching us." "But he's the number one hero. I shouldn't have just..." Izuku's breath hitched in his chest and he shook his head. He couldn't see the image of his hero's face. He couldn't get the image of his hero's face falling to the ground, falling into that gross disappointment when he realized Izuku was quirkless. He couldn't stop thinking about those words or his inability to stand up for hours after it happened. "It doesn't matter who he is, he hurt you, and you have a right to be angry about that. Same goes for Bakugo. He hurt you. It's okay to be mad." Hitoshi nuzzled Izuku's wet curls. But maybe ease up on the name calling. Izuku laughed half-heartedly. "Yeah, I actually didn't mean to snap like that. I just saw red when he touched Emmy's band. You're the only quirk person who has ever touched my bands, who's ever been allowed to touch them." His mother had, His mother had when grabbing him, but she didn't care to know what they meant, nor did she ask permission to touch them. Hitoshi slid his fingers down Izuku's arms and brushed his fingers over the slippery metal bands around Izuku's wrist. Izuku closed his eyes and clutched his boyfriend's hand atop of them. The touch was comforting and a reminder that Izuku wasn't alone. He had support, even if he continuously forgot. Hitoshi reminded him every time. "I'll always be here for you, Izuku. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard." Izuku shifted, pushing himself back so he could spin himself around. Hitoshi opened his arms and let him move. He tucked his legs over Hitoshi's legs and wrapped his arms around his boyfriend's back. Izuku tucked his head right under Hitoshi's chin as the taller teen once more enveloped him in a hug. "I'm so tired, Toshi," Izuku whispered. "I'm so tired of the funerals, the vigils and death, the humiliation and the abuse and hate. I just want to live. I want to live like everyone else in the world. Why won't they let me?" "I don't know." Hitoshi cupped the back of his head and kissed the crown of Izuku's head again. "I wish I knew." The shower pelted their shoulders, making their words sort of melt together and wash away in the drain. But we'll prove them wrong, together, I promise. They sat in silence after the shower ran cold. Izuku had finally felt cleared-headed, and the panic had washed away from his muscles. They were both soaked and pruning by the time they got out, but Izuku was thankful that Hitoshi had been there for him. It was just so hard to believe that in that support some days, that love. It was hard to believe that he wasn't alone, but every time Toshi was there for him in simple ways, it renewed Izuku's faith that maybe one day he would be accepted in society. But getting to that day would take a long time. Still, Hitoshi would be there, holding his hand the whole time, even when it was hard. Getting ready for the next day class was exciting, and also an anxiety-ridden experience. Izuku was fully prepared to just curl up on his bed all day and forget the last 6 months had even happened. But he was here, he was a hero student, and he would not be letting this one last chance slip out from his grasp. If he didn't succeed at being a hero, his only option was not only morally reprehensible, but also illegal. Even with the Quirk Compassion Act in place, and most laws being designed for quirked people, Izuku knew vigilante and villainy were illegal. It didn't matter if he didn't technically fall under either, as they were stated the use of a quirk too. He knew society would only look at him for the monster they already assumed he was. Some dark part of him wanted to show them that monster. He wanted to rip apart the heroes who had put boots in his face. He wanted to destroy them, but he didn't want to lose himself in the process. He didn't allow himself to dwell on those locked up notebooks from Nezu's office. He poorly tied his uniform tie and grabbed his backpack. Today he would be the first Quirkless person, the first Lily, to be a UA student in the hero course. Today he would wear his pin proudly on his collar and hold his head high. You all have pitiful situational awareness seats now. Shota had pulled himself out of a yellow sleeping bag at the front of the classroom. Izuku had noticed the slug-like creature on the floor when he walked in, but it had taken him a moment to realize that it was their teacher. Shota did tell them that if they didn't see him, if he was sleeping in public, he'd be watching and listening. The whole room scrambled to their desks and sat at attention in 5 seconds flat. As promised, today you'll be doing a quirk and fitness assessment test. I've decided that you'll be doing that. That's all we'll be doing today. I'll be assigning homework for tomorrow. Half the room groaned audibly. Shota held up his hand. Remember, the last place gets expelled. Do your best and remember the rules I laid out yesterday. 20 pairs of eyes followed him to the door where he stopped. Be on the track in 10 minutes. You'll find your gym gear in the universal locker system. You'll find access panel to each one of your lockers on campus. "10 minutes was not a lot of time. The whole room burst into action. Ida used his natural speed and a dash of his quirk to burst out of the room with Katsuki and Kirishima hot on his tail. Sue hopped after them with Momo and Uraraka shortly after her. Izuku and Hitoshi waited for the last of their classmates to leave. Koda and Tokoyami were also walking slowly and politely waved. Izuku smiled back and wrapped his arm in Hitoshi's as they walked. "May I ask an invasive question, Midoriya?" Sure, I guess. What's on your mind, Tokoyami?" The bird-headed student nodded. Dark Shadow, his sentient quirk, also nodded. I was wondering how Aizawa-sensei will evaluate you two. Hitoshi snickers. He'll probably make Izuku and I do different tests. Why's that? Koda whispered. Wow, okay, thanks. Peeking shyly around Dark Shadow. Shoda trained Toshi and I over the summer, hence the first name basis. I was sort of homeless for a few months. Anyway, he wanted me to catch up with the class physically since I didn't have a quirk. Ah, that makes sense. Well, it'll be interesting to see. Izuku decided he liked Tokoyami. The student was honest, and though blunt like Todoroki, he wasn't rude or cruel. Dark Shadow seemed shy, but she was very sweet and seemed ready to help. When they walked in that morning, Uraraka had missed her desk and dropped her backpack. Dark Shadow caught it before it could spill on the floor. The outdoor locker rooms were familiar, a separate building to the changing rooms, lockers and bathrooms. A separate building with changing rooms, lockers and bathrooms and showers for the students. At the front of the building, there were 2 panels on each side of the cylinder. I don't know that word, but it's a cylinder. Each student would press their hand to the panel, and once it confirmed their identity, they would be summoned a locker with their name and class on the front of it. Once opened, there were 4 cases, one for their gym gear, a second for their hero suit, the third was an extra school uniform in case of emergencies, and the fourth was for any accessories or additional items they wanted to keep in their universal locker. Izuku grabbed his gym gear and quickly changed, meeting Shota on the field first, with Hitoshi not far behind him. You and Toshi are going to sit out on this. What are we going to do instead? And speaking of Hitoshi, the taller teen walked up and placed an arm on his shoulders as he asked Shota what they'll be doing. Oh, let's see. The tired hero rubbed his stubbled chin. Izuku rolled his eyes. Hitoshi is getting 40 scarf pull-ups, 20 forward flips, 20 backwards flips, plus a 5-minute support hang. Shota dropped his head back and groaned. Izuku chuckled. Support hangs were basically like half bar hangs, but with a capture scarf used instead of as an extension. It was nigh impossible for Izuku, but Hitoshi had picked them up pretty quick. Still, 5 minutes was brutal, even for their regimen training over the last couple of months. Izuku, 2 laps, 500 one-handed push-ups, left and right, so 100, then, let's do a 5-minute pole balance. Izuku slumped. Oh, come on, Shota, really? Would you rather be doing the boring test your classmates are doing? Yes, both Hitoshi and Izuku answered. The class started to gather as they were speaking. Shota ruffled hair on both of their heads with a devious grin. A couple of their classmates looked curious. That wouldn't be fair to your fellow students. Go on, get to work. It doesn't matter what order you do your tasks in. Sensei? Kirishima raised his hand. He went on when Shota pointed at him. Isn't it unfair to make them do different tasks, or is it because they don't have physical quirks? Izuku dropped and started with his left hand for the one-handed push-ups. It'll be unfair to all of you, actually. I've been training these 2 over the summer. They're quite a bit ahead of you in physical training. Unless you want to run laps or do one-handed push-ups with Izuku, or take a swing at those. He pointed to Hitoshi over at the pull-up bars. The teen was hanging his capture weapon scarf around the bar with one hand, using it to do one-handed pull-ups with his legs crossed. Never mind, Kirishima muttered. That's what I thought. Now then, listen up. Here are your tests. 50-meter dash, grip strength, standing long jump, 30-second repeated side steps, and lastly, simple ball throw. There will also be the basics like sit-ups, push-ups, and seated toe touches. You can use your quirks however you deem necessary to accomplish the test. Let's begin. Izuku watched his classmates do their assessments with Hitoshi. He was more focused on their quirks and how they decided to utilize them in order to get better scores. Okay, so it's obvious that Ida has speed, but I think he'll have the same turning problem as his brother Ingenium. Turning? Hitoshi asked. Yup. Uraraka has a wild quirk. Hitoshi was staring at the sky where the ball she flew through had vanished into the atmosphere. Right, but how much can she lift weight-wise, and how many objects at once? It would also be effective. It would be effective for teamwork, or she would risk injury to her teammates. Basically, can she control the descent or not? Why do you have to ruin a cool quirk? Izuku shrugged. Holy shit, I did not think of compound strength. Did you see Shoji's score on the grip test? Izuku was just finishing up his laps as he passed the class doing their grip strengths and flexibility tests. What? His Zupo arms? Izuku nodded. That's a good point. Do you think if I brainwash him, I could unlock even more like I do with you? It's probable. We should test it. Shredder would be really mad if we broke the gym walls again. They both grinned. Hitoshi and Izuku were lying on the ground, exhausted from their tests. Izuku's legs were jelly from his pole balance on his bow staff, and Hitoshi's arms were bruised from his 5-minute support hang. They had their hands tipped back watching the other students. Okay, that's pretty smart. Naval laser to blast himself backwards. I didn't think a laser would have amnesia. Me either. Izuku put a finger to his lips and thought. But look. Hitoshi nodded his head, unable to use his arms. Hitoshi nodded his head, unable to use his arms. Oh, that's not good. After Aoyama used his quirk, he got an upset stomach. It was a really harsh drawback for just a small application of his quirk. Was Aoyama perhaps not suited to his quirk? It wasn't super uncommon for someone to be born with a quirk either too powerful or not suited to their body, but it wasn't usually that bad. More often than not, one had to seriously use a quirk to see such drawbacks. I wonder if you can find a way to help him. Izuku sat up, hugging his knees. I don't know. My first thought would be use anti-nausea whenever using his quirk, but that's just a band-aid, not a cure. I'd need to think about it for a while, but ultimately I think the best route would be to train his stomach. Like what? Eat a ton of spicy food to gain intolerance to indigestion? Yeah, kind of. Do you think that would work, Sue? Maybe, but it's hard to tell. The theories that quirks can evolve under extreme stress. There are quirks that, thanks. Maybe it's hard to tell, but there are theories that quirks can evolve under extreme stress. And while I'm not opposed to the idea, I've never seen it in action or read any studies that actually have any proof to the effect. Hitoshi clicked his tongue while squinting at the sky. He grumbled. So if you can create a fake stress scenario, you could get his quirk to evolve. It's a huge maybe. The goal would be to get his quirk to change just enough for his body to tolerate it better. How hard would that be? Hitoshi asked. It sure wouldn't be fun. Izuku rolled his bow staff between his hands as they watched the whole class finish up the tests with a few laps around the track. They were all in decent shape, physical condition, which was good. They also appeared to have a good grasp on their quirks, but Izuku could tell they hadn't had no formal training in combat or defense, minus Todoroki, who Izuku assumed had been brutally trained by Endeavor his whole life. Their teacher would change that pretty fast, though. What do you think? Schroeder crossed his arms as he walked over, a singular spark of pride on his features. It was gone as quick as they'd seen it. They're not entirely unsalvageable. They need work, but I think they have a good foundation. I would suggest focusing on more unconventional quirk use for most of them. Eden needs to practice his turns to avoid becoming his brother. Uraraka should be focused on quirk control and weightlifting. Shoji should do some training with Hitoshi on strength. Aoyama could really use some resistance training for his indigestion and stomach crampings. The tired hero nodded. The tired hero thought that over for a few minutes before nodding. I expect full reports on each of your classmates by next Friday. Is that enough time? Izuku thought it over by tipping his head to the side. It seemed Schroeder was actually coming around to the idea of Izuku tearing apart quirks for fun. Yeah, that should be enough time to get 19 quirk assessments. If you just want initial findings, full reports in singular notebooks can take a few weeks. Sounds good. Make sure they're coded and send me the copy. Nezugetsu originals. Aye, Schroeder. Hitoshi chuckled. You're really giving him that much homework on the first day, Sensei? He can handle it. Problem child has the best brain in the whole school. Schroeder leaned forward with a smirk. Tell Nezu I said that and you're beginning a 5-minute mile in training. Schroeder knew how to threaten them properly. Neither of them wanted to run a 5-minute mile. Could they? Sure. But Izuku and Hitoshi had been running from both Izuku and Hitoshi had been running from bullies since they were kids. They could run, but it didn't mean they wanted to. Izuku and Hitoshi shared a look, and Schroeder turned back to his class, which were all exhaustedly limping to the finish line of their laps. Alright, Hellspawn, let's get the scores. The nearby sports screen flipped over to reveal their individual scores. Hitoshi and Izuku were both on the bottom because they hadn't participated, but so their scores were 0. They both shared a knowing glance and bumped shoulders. Wait, I thought you said Midori and Shinto were exempt, Uraraka pointed out. I never said they were exempt. They didn't participate, so they got 0s. That's no fair. Life isn't fair. I made a fair fight for all of you, so they get 0s. That means they get expelled. Izuku was trying hard to hide his laughter. Hitoshi was doing a much better job. What? But they did harder tests. What bullshit is this? You can't do that, Sensei. The whole class was in uproar. Izuku tossed an arm around Hitoshi's shoulder. Izuku had kept the truth pretty close to heart, but he knew that this was a test. The first rule Schroeder had gave them, be a class, be a team. But this was an individual test, a comprehension, which was putting them under stress. They had to work through it to see through it. Alright, enough. The class quieted down after a few more expletives from Katsuki and several other students grumbling. You all pass. Under the circumstances of being a competition, you all did what you had to do, your best. When it comes down to it, you stood up for your classmates when you were a team. You did well. What do you mean? Suya asked. You've lied to us, Ribbit? He didn't lie, just didn't tell you the whole truth, Izuku explained. As heroes, you won't have every piece of information, but you will have each other. Don't ever discount what you can do with just a little help. Your quirk may not work with every villain or in every situation, but if you have others around you who can help, you'll be far better off, Shadow went on. From here on out, you'll train and learn as a team, understood? Understood, Sensei, the class exclaimed. Good, plus ultra, or whatever. Showed aside, you're all dismissed for the day. You've all got one page paper due tomorrow. Write about why you're here. Why do you want to be a hero? What does being a hero mean to you? Before you ask, no, you're not allowed to say you want to be the number one hero or that you want to be rich. No simple answers. Give me 500 words on what the hell inspired you to work your asses off to get here. Got it? With the sounding of yes sir and yes sensei, the class called out their understanding. Izuku could tell they weren't happy about having to write a 500-word long essay on the first day, but they weren't complaining. Schroeder left them to their own devices and split the class up, and the class split up into a few groups. Most went back to the locker rooms to change, but some decided to search of food and a shower. Izuku and Hitoshi had yet to move from their spot on the grass. Do you think they'll make good heroes? Hitoshi kissed Izuku's temple. So much for less PDA. Oh well. Izuku snuggled up to his boyfriend. Yeah, I do. Do you think we'll make good heroes? Izuku chuckled. Obviously. A throat clearing pulled Izuku's attention away. Katsuki was standing nearby and waving his hand awkwardly. Kachan? Hitoshi looked up with concerned eyes. Izuku was quick to wave his worries away. Can we... The blonde stumbled over his words. Can we talk? Yeah. Hitoshi groaned when he stood up, not wanting to release him. It's fine, Toshi. I'll be back in a few minutes. I'll meet you back at the dorms. Just text me if you need me. Hitoshi kissed Izuku's cheek and bobbed his nose. Come on, Kachan, let's walk. Izuku took his former friend back towards the school building. The grounds were on the building itself, around the building itself, and The grounds around the building itself had tons of sidewalks and garden design. It was made for calm walks like this, and Izuku thought that maybe the quiet atmosphere and the nice garden and only a few students passing would keep their conversation at a low tone. Both of their hands tucked into their pants pockets, still in their gym uniforms. Katsuki had his boots half untied and thumping as they walked. Izuku was more focused on how his tongue felt rolling around his mouth. Katsuki has asked to talk, so Izuku gave him all the time he needed to come up with the words he needed or wanted to say. There were 100 possible things Katsuki might want to say, and Izuku wasn't going to assume which of those possibilities it might be. He knew which one he had hoped for, but he didn't want to give himself false optimism. I did research last night. Izuku looked up, an O expression offered, but no words. I found an old online forum talking about... fuck. I'm not good at this shit. The blonde rubbed at the side of his head. It didn't say much, but I get it now, kind of. What do you get? I'm sorry for touching your bands. They represent things, right? The forums didn't say much about the one with names on it. But that's someone who... Izuku sucked in a breath. Yeah, the red bands present a Quirkless person, usually a friend or family member, who committed suicide. The band you picked up was Emi Osaki. She was an elder in the community. She took her life some weeks ago. An elder? She was in her early 30s, not accounting for the actual elderly Quirkless population in the country. 20s or 30s are the oldest among us. 60 years ago, it wasn't uncommon to find Quirkless people, but once the birth rate of Quirkless people plateaued, well, there was a huge gap between 90-year-old Quirkless people and the rest of us are under 30. Damn, I didn't know it was that bad. It gets worse. In the last 15 years, the number of living quirkless people has dropped from 15% to only 9% in the country. What? Yeah, only 1% of the 6% we lost were due to natural deaths. The other 5%? Hate crimes and suicide. Izuku. No, just don't. I don't want pity. We don't want your pity. I just want you to understand why this matters to me. Why it's so hard for me to be here. That I can be a hero and change the damn world. You know, when we were kids, the perpetual scowl on Katsuki's face wore Katsuki wore softened into a genuine smile for the first time in years. It actually helped to release some of the tension in Izuku's neck. I think that if anyone in the whole world can change it to be better, it would be you. Yeah? Izuku brushed some of his curls from his face. Katsuki cleared his throat, the smile was gone, but his face wasn't as tight as it usually was. Yeah, you deserve an apology for everything in the past. Kachan, I get it. You're not ready. I don't know if I'm ready for that either. No, it's not that. It's more that I don't know if I... They stopped walking for a moment when while he fumbled over his words. Aizawa said a lot of shit that my mind's all jumbled up. I know what I did is wrong. I sort of always have known that. But I didn't know it had left scars. He cleared his throat again. I didn't know I left scars on your body. Oh, well, yeah. You weren't the only one. Izuku rubbed an old scar from where his mother threw a bottle at his head and cracked his skull open. Mum liked to throw things at me. Me included. She, got arrested before summer break. What? Katsuki stopped walking again. What did she do? Well, she sort of almost killed me. Izuku, what the fuck? Hey, it's fine. It really doesn't matter. It does matter. You can't just tell me your mum almost killed you and that means nothing. Kachan, please, take a breath. I'm fine now. Yeah, now, what the hell does that mean? Izuku put a hand on Katsuki's chest. The blonde took a deep breath and put his hands up, surrendering the argument. It was on the day of the entrance exams. I passed. Shoda handed me the acceptance letter himself. When I got home, Inko thought I forged it. Thought it was a joke. She got mad. Then I tried to explain, but she never did like when I talked back. Izuku snorted. She muzzled me, threw me against my desk with her quirk. I smacked my rib cage, punctured my lung. I would have died if Osama didn't come get me. Osama was the guy that was with you yesterday, right? He is my mentor, an elder in the community. The elders mentor the younger ones and try to protect them. It doesn't always work. Emmy, back in February, her mentee, a 6-year-old named Masami, killed herself. The night my mother almost killed me. One of our other elders, Nami, she came with Osama to find me. That was the night Emmy killed herself. Well, Nami was with me instead of watching over her. Izuku. If you're gonna say don't blame yourself, you can save your breath. I do blame myself. Nothing you can say will change that. Izuku shrugged. There was really nothing Katsuki could say that would change how Izuku had felt that night. How part of him had broken, and he was sure that it wouldn't, and he wasn't sure if it would ever heal. He was slowly coming to terms with it, and it didn't mean he'd forgiven himself. The point that I was trying to make is that it doesn't always work, the mentor program. It doesn't always work. Because of that, we need society to change. If quirkless people are going to be accepted in the world, then maybe we could stop... If quirkless people were accepted in the world, then maybe we could stop them from being abused, stop them from taking their own lives. They started walking again. For a while, they were quiet, lost in their own thoughts. Izuku didn't feel the need to say anything else. Katsuki didn't seem to be able to speak for a moment. So they walked. The sun was dripping down towards the horizon, not quite sunset. The campus had emptied out, leaving them alone in peaceful silence. "Do you ever," Katsuki sighed, "did you ever try to take your own life?" "Yes." There was no reason to lie. Telling Katsuki no wouldn't do anything but put another wall between them. Twice. Izuku held out his arms and pointed to the 2 white metal bands. "That's what these stand for." "So the red ones are for friends who have died. The white ones are your own attempts. What about the other 2? Izuku sighed. The blue is gifted. I stopped someone from taking their life, a friend. The orange? It means different things, depending on who wears it." Izuku tucked his sleeve down over his bands. "If a quirked person wears it, it's to represent the survival of physical abuse or quirk discrimination. Toshi has one for that reason." "I know I have no right to ask, but I'm curious. You want to know what that means to me?" Katsuki nodded. I'm also an abuse survivor, the other kind." He sighed. "My father might have left us when I was 6, but he was a pitiful excuse of a father long before that." "You don't need an explanation." Izuku nodded. This was certainly not the talk he thought they'd be having, but it was a start. If Katsuki understood where he'd gone wrong, maybe he would see where he understood what he went through. Maybe he would see where he went wrong, or where the world had pushed him astray. They had almost arrived back in the dorms. He could see Hitoshi waiting for him on the front steps. They must have been gone a while. Hitoshi was probably worried about Izuku. If Shota had been around, or even Osamu, there was no way he would just let them walk off with Katsuki. But maybe it was better this way. "Do you ever think it's possible to redeem for the things I did to you?" Again, they stopped. This time, Katsuki put a hand on his arm, and Izuku turned to face him. A soft smile reached up and cupped his former friend's face. "I don't see much point in redemption, Katsu-chan. Redemption won't erase the past. Forgiveness won't wash away the blood or mend the scars." "Izuku, aren't you afraid of becoming a hero without a quirk?" "No." He patted Katsuki's hand and turned to walk away. I'm not scared to bite and crawl my way through the heroism, but I'm still scared of you." Izuku didn't wait for Katsuki's reaction or his reply. He left the explosive blonde standing on the sidewalk with a field of fallout in his chest, a bombshell for a heart. The truth would sting and burn, but he had to hear it, and Izuku had to say it. Okay, everyone, that was chapter 8. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for staying with me through that stuttering mess. It was a nightmare. I haven't recorded in like 5 days now, so I kind of forget how to talk for long periods of time. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later. See ya. Make sure to take care of yourself. Bye.